Okay, good morning, friends. So till the last class, we have discussed about bond valuation, etc. And in fact, there was a news item I had posted in the bond valuation about how SEBI rules regarding bond valuation. That SEBI has assumed the perpetual bonds to be having 100 years maturity, because perpetual bonds means there is no maturity period, but for the valuation purpose they have to do some maturity period. Earlier it was short period, now it has become 100 years maturity, and one can have a look at that particular news item which I posted in the Teams and see how did the implication on the valuation of bonds when the maturity period assumption is changing. It has led to also impairment of bond valuation, because the bond that is invested by somebody is, let's say, valued at 1000 crore, and because the change in rules and valuation change, etc., the valuation comes to, let's say, 900 crore, then the company which is holding the bond has to book an impairment loss of 100 crore. 1000 crore minus 900 crore, so 100 crore loss. So because of this assumption longer, very long maturity period, so impairment loss seems to be very high, which the industry has expressed concern, and then Government of India has done something to restrict the SEBI not to change the rules now. That is just a very real life example of how maturity, with the change in maturity period, what happens to the bond valuation. So I'll urge all of you again to have a look at that news item that is posted in this Teams. Today we will talk about the valuation of equity shares. So we have started the valuation of equities in the last class. So equity is nothing but the ownership in the companies. So valuation of equity shares, one challenge in case of valuation of equity shares versus valuation of bond is, in case of bond, the cash flows are known, or at least expected that this is the cash flow which is going to come in terms of interest and principal. Whereas in case of equity, there is no promise that you will be getting some interest or dividend assured, or you are going to get how much at a particular period of maturity. So that such type of guarantee is not there in case of bond. So in a generic valuation principle, what we do, we say the valuation of anything is a function of, let's say, V0 is equal to CF T, where 1 plus I is the discounting factor to the power T, the summation of this, where T extends from 1 to N. Okay. So in case of equity, the N becomes perpetuity, infinity period, because equity is a perpetual investment. So now in case of equity, what happens, like in a bond cash flow, you have interest and principal, which is known at the time of issue of the bond itself. Whereas in case of equity, we do not know. There is a big question mark. Here it is known in case of bond or debentures. Okay, so that means there is a lot of uncertainty about the cash flow itself. And then comes the discounting factor. The discounting factor is anyway not same for all the investors. It can vary, but you can assume some discounting factor depending on the risk appetite of the investor. But in case of bonds, since the interest and principal amount variation is very much unlikely, unless it is a junk bond or sick company bond for that matter, a distressed company bond. So the interest rate expected by the investor is not going to vary very much as far as bond investment is concerned. Whereas the return expected by equity shareholders can vary from person to person, because the risk appetite can be different. And so here what happens, the challenge is that the cash flow, the numerator you do not have, you have variation possible, and in case of denominator also you have lot of variation possible. So equity valuation is definitely a challenging thing, and for this purpose we have also different methods of valuation of equity. It's not that only one method of valuation of equities, a straitjacket method, unlike a bond as such. So what we will do today, we'll talk about the valuation of equity shares on different aspects. Okay, we have discussed in the last class. So if a valuation of equity shares, so one is called cash flow based valuation. Then we'll talk about asset based valuation. Then we'll talk about relative valuation method. So these are the three things, important valuation methods with respect to equity valuation. So these three things we'll discuss. And so when it comes to cash flow based valuation method, in case of equity, what is the cash flow for the investor? It is called dividend. So essentially, we are talking about dividend discounting model. Okay. So dividend, in dividend discounting model, we have again zero growth model. We have got constant growth model. Then you have got variable growth model. Okay. So it comes with zero growth model. That means you are going to get dividend of X rupees for all the years to come. Now let's say a stock A, okay, which is expected to declare dividend of rupees 3 per share, dividend per share. So dividend is 3 rupees per share. And if expected rate of return of the investor is, let's say 12%. So what is my valuation? Because 3 rupees is going to come for all the periods to come. So this is typically perpetuity. So what is the value of perpetuity? So value of perpetuity will be here. In case of D, dividend, T is by rate of return or cost of capital, cost of equity. Okay, so here it will be how much then? 3 rupees divided by 0.12, so it comes to 25 rupees. Okay, that's the valuation of the for a zero growth model. Whereas it is very much likely that dividend will grow as this company grows. The company's profit grow, and so dividend is likely to grow. So dividend doesn't remain constant; it slowly grows. We'll talk about dividend growth itself, etc. in our dividend values, dividend theory class. But for the time, you can say that yes, as the companies grow, revenues grow, profit grow. So dividend that is distributed for the share also can also grow. So it is fair to assume that there will be growth in the dividend. So let us take one more example where the company has declared dividend this year, that is a 0 year, rupees 5, and it is expected to grow at 5% till perpetuity. Okay, so and with the expected rate of return is 15%. Okay, so what is my valuation of it? It is a perpetuity with growth, that is the model will apply. So amount of value per share will be dividend next year, dividend 1 divided by rate of return, that is, let's say I minus growth. So here it comes to rupees 5 is the dividend for this year. So into 1.05 divided by 0.15 minus 0.05. So that comes to 5 rupees 25 paisa divided by 0.10, that comes to rupees 52.50. So this is for dividend discounting model with a constant growth. But it is also possible that companies may declare a very high dividend. The dividend may grow at a very high rate during a particular period of time, maybe initial few years. Then it may stabilize at a constant growth rate, which is also very much likely. The companies start doing the business and start making profit. The profit growth may be very high, which is called a supernormal growth phase, and then they'll change to normal growth phase. That is typically the businesses happen as such. Because initially, because you have untapped market, competition is low, so you have got more sales possibility, more revenue, more sales, more cash flow, more profit, etc. So you will think of declaring possibly more dividend that time, and dividend can also grow as the revenue, etc. is also having a supernormal growth phase. But supernormal growth phase cannot be there for any company, any business for a very long period of time or till the perpetuity. So companies have to come to a normal phase of growth. So in that case, what will happen? You will have dividends for next 2-3 years, some amount which is growing at a particular pace, next 2-3-5 whatever number of years. After that, dividend will be a constant growth as. So what we'll do now, let us take this particular let's data and let us use a spreadsheet, because you have more calculations involved. So let us use a spreadsheet for this purpose. So let's say company D, the dividend or expect dividend for next few years. Let's say year 1, 2, 3 is going to be, let's say 10 rupees, then 14 rupees, and then let's say 17 rupees. Okay, that means first year to second year 40% growth, then third year to second to third year 3 rupees growth, so 3 upon 40 for 14 rupees, that is a big growth as such. And then after this, after third year, the dividend will grow at, it's 7% till perpetuity. Okay. In fact, we have done similar things in your time value of money class, similar exercise. So how do you do about that? Let's say the expected rate of return is 15%. Okay. So let's keep it here 7%. Will grow till perpetuity at this 7%. Okay. So now how do you do that? First of all, what we will do, we will find out the present value of cash flow or dividend. So what we will do, 10 divided by 1 plus R to the power 1, and let me drag it. So this is your 3 years dividend. And then comes the present value of dividends from 4th year onward at third year end. First we will do that, which we will term as TV3, terminal value. It's also not terminal value, terminal 3, because at the end of third year. So that comes to how much? So equal to dividend fourth year, that is 17 into growth, 1 plus growth, that is 7%, whole divided, that is your thing, whole divided by your I minus G. So I minus G means 15% minus 7%. So that is your value of dividend that you are going to get from fourth year onward. That value is at the end of third year. Okay, so and what is the present value of TV3? Means today at the point of 0, nothing but you discount 3 times. So 1 plus 15% to the power 3 years. Present value of TV3 and present value of dividends from 1 to 3 year, that is nothing but the summation of these 3. So summation of these 3 cash flows. This one, so value of share, so value of equity share is equal to 149 plus this much. So that is the way one can find out the value of share using multi-stage growth model here. So you can see here the growth of dividend is very high, like 40% here. Here it is not 40%, but definitely more than 7%, which is a perpetual growth like that. This is a supernormal phase of growth. This is a normal phase of growth after third year. So this is your dividend growth model when multiple growths are there. Right. So let's go to the difficulty or the challenge in case dividend model, discounting model is that all the companies might not be declaring dividend. Similarly, companies might be declaring dividend but may be very minuscule compared to the market price. So it is fair to say that investors do not expect dividend to invest in shares unless some people like senior citizens, they will be investing in equity shares for dividend because they need the dividend income for their daily, for the day-to-day expenses. Okay, so they have invested some shares, so they will always, because the retired citizens, retired persons, they don't have other source of income like salary, etc. So they will be depending on the cash flow from their investment. So they will be going for such stocks which pays more dividend. But in any case, otherwise, if you look at the company's dividend history, you will see that dividend as a percent of market price per share is very small. So in that case, what will happen? Dividend valuation model may not be suitable or appropriate. Okay. So now if you have to, let's take an example. So let me show if you have that data for some companies. Let me go to the database here. So let me choose a company here, company by name. So let me show the database, that is a ProAce IQ CMI database. So let me show here. So let's say take an example of, let's say, Infosys. So Infosys Limited. Similarly, let me take the example of, let's say, TCS. Let me take also one other example, some other sector like Mahindra and Mahindra. Mahindra and Mahindra. Okay. So if I go to that company data, so let's go to report view. So I have these 3 companies here, and if I go to their financial statements, So let's say in summary reports, you do not have dividends here, obviously will not be there. We'll go to profit and appropriation. So let's see the company. This is which company? This is Mahindra and Mahindra. The company declared 706.08 crore. It is rupees crore. 7068.08 as the dividend for year 2011. So let's go to the latest year. In 2020, the company declared 1187.33 dividend. Okay, so 1187.33 dividend will be, if I go to balance sheet, so you have paid up capital 596. So dividend per share, let me see if there is another some other ratios here. Dividend is there. Okay, directly is given. Very good. Right. So dividend per share for Mahindra and Mahindra Limited, ₹2.35, and that was 12th June 2021 or 12th June 2020. So, and the price was 570.9, that day closing price. So if you look at on 570 rupees 90 paisa, the company declared 2 rupees 30 paisa dividend. Of course, in the previous year, maybe in 2019, that means for 18-19, they declared 8 rupees 50 paisa. So it was 13, 7.5, 8.5. This was another example where dividend may not remain constant for all the years. It can go up, it can fall. All those things are there. So if you look at this, so 2 rupees 35 paisa, even if you take 8 rupees 50 paisa also, which was the last year, previous year, as 2019, on 597.40, so 8 rupees 50 paisa on 597 means it was less than 2%. So you cannot expect that somebody investing in a share price share for 2% return as dividend. That's why we say that investors do not look for the dividend as the factor to invest in share. They'll actually go for expected appreciation in the market price the share, they'll go for that. So now we can also have the same data for Infosys Limited. Let's see what is the dividend per share latest. So they have declared an interim dividend in October. They also declared a final dividend. So if you look at 2019-20, we can say the 9 rupees and the 8 rupees can be the interim and final for 2019-20. So it comes to 17.5. Even if you take 50 rupees as the share value, 650, 690, so now it has become 1,100. Let's say 7 rupees the share price, or 650 for that matter. So on 650 rupees, 17 rupees comes to how much? Around 3%, between 2 and 3%. So this also you can see dividend yield is not that. This is called dividend yield, dividend per share to market price per share. Then let us look at another example of Tata Consulting Services. Let's see what has been their dividend track record. So here also if you look at, we'll take let's say these 2 years, they have 3 interim dividends. So also they have got special dividend, etc. So this is okay. So we can take this as an example for 2019-20. So interim they have a special dividend also. Maybe for some reason one can explore about that. That comes to 12 plus 5 17 plus 5 22 plus 25 7 27. So 67 because of 40 rupees dividend. So if you remove this 40 rupees special dividend, so 27 rupees upon 2000 also comes to how much? 1.35%. Even if you add 40 rupees also, 67, that also comes to 3%. So that's what we saw in 3 companies which has been paying dividend consistently. The dividend to market price has been very low, so which is around 2 to 3% sometimes. So that's what I want to justify, that people possibly not be going for dividend as the main purpose for investing in shares. Yes, they will get dividend, but dividend is something which the shareholders cannot refuse. If the company declares dividend, shareholders must take them. That is no option for the investor that will not take the dividend in cash. That is not there. So now let us go to the other valuation approaches as far as equity share is concerned. So next thing is we go for asset based valuation. We know balance sheet comprises of assets, which is nothing but equity plus liability. That was an accounting equation. So what is value of equity? Nothing but this one. So if I know the value of equity, what is value per share? This is also called book value approach. Book means book of accounts. As per book accounting books, what is the value per share? So value will be total equity divided by number of equity shares. Okay. So then in that case, otherwise also assets or assets minus liabilities, which is nothing but equity, divided by number of equity shares. So if you go back to our example, so if you go to this one, let's see whether you have the necessary information or not. We want to know the value of, let's say, TCS or Mahindra or Infosys are applying asset valuation. In fact, you have some ratios in the database of valuation indicators also and ratios. Let's look at if you have those things. Yes, very good. In fact, this is a very good summary of the things. Like you have book value per share is given here. It comes to 196.15. Whereas market price comes to how much? 3057. That's good. So at the end of 2012 March, they could find out book value. Otherwise, you go by the latest year, that is March 2020, 1920. At the end, they had got value of equity per share, which is nothing but, as we have explained in the formula, assets minus liability whole divided number of shares. That comes to 198.19. Whereas at that point of time, the adjusted share price was 1826.10. Similarly, if you look at the Infosys Limited, we have got the value per share as 146.12, whereas market price comes to 641.50. Mahindra Limited, last year, that was 277.45 was your valuation of share as far as book value is concerned, whereas market price was 285. Only in this particular company like Mahindra and Mahindra, you can see that there is a close proximity between market value and the book value. The reason could be in 2020 March that the pandemic has started, the share price was very much depressed. Otherwise, if you look at last year, it is 673.90 rupees, the market price, vis-a-vis 275 rupees 0.64 book value. And the present they have updated the data, whatever maybe the unaudited data for quarterly results have come. Based on that, they have found out book value is going to 279 rupees, whereas the market price 835. So what is the thing that I'm talking about here is that maybe book value does not reflect the true value or worth of the share as such, because share price, when you say book value is the basis, that means you are assuming that value of the company is driven by whatever future cash flow, etc., as if that is the only a function of the assets held by the company. But that may not be the case. The revenue of a particular company, cash flow of the company may depend on assets owned by the company as well as some reputation, goodwill, image, which are not part of balance sheet also. So because companies may have good employee, companies may have good scientists, which are not part of balance sheet. But I'll go to buy the shares of the company because of presence of good scientists. The company is expected to go for get more patents, copyrights, etc., which will lead to more revenue and cash flow in the subsequent time period. So because of that, I may put a high value for that. So my valuation of the share is not a function of what the assets owned by the company. Whereas it can be something else. Assets owned by, I mean that assets owned means they are also present in balance sheet. Company can feel happy about the employees they have, scientists they have, but company cannot put them in the balance sheet. Whatever they paid them salary, that is part of the income statement. Similarly, company may have good brand image, etc. So I will buy that particular product as a customer because the company has got a good brand. But that brand is not necessarily part of the balance sheet. So my book value of the equity, that is called assets minus liability, or book value total assets, does not reflect that brand, which actually drives revenue and cash flow. And for the valuation of equity, I look at the future cash flow, which is a function of future revenue, and future revenue is a function of assets owned by the company as well as other assets which are not owned by the company, but people feel good about them, like image, goodwill, all those things. Okay. So that's why book value assets may not be right one, but book value asset, book value equity approach is very suitable for a company which is in distress, because at that point of time, company has only some assets which can be disposed of, and whatever they are realized from the disposal, then they will give the liability, and whatever is left over that belongs to equity shareholders. So in such cases, we can say that book value of equity, book value method can be appropriate. Similarly, you also say that yes, possible book value method may be applicable for a company like a banking sector. That is also another area where you can possibly look at price book value assets. By the way, if you look at this particular thing, you have some summary here. We have what price earning ratio also 23.89, earnings per share 11.93, cash earnings per. Then you have price to book value. Price to book value nothing but market price per share by book value per share, which we have discussed in our financial statement analysis class. So now, if I have to go to another example where you have to actually calculate the book value of equity, if I look at this company also, like I have to know how this book value has been found out. Let's say 270 for 77.45. If I have to look at so let me go to balance sheet. So in balance sheet, you have the value of equity, which is that is 595.8 and 33.613. That is your total equity in 2018-19, whereas 596.52 and 33,871.32 is value of equity together, and these two things you add together, 596.52 and 33. So this figure plus this figure, so that gives you value of equity, and you divide these two together by number of equity shares, then it gives you value per share. Another way is that, and another way is that you go for total assets, that is your 51,112.62 minus liabilities only, that is you have got the long-term borrowing 2033 altogether, that okay, and this short-term 6782, all this together remove from the assets, that gives you value of equity, total equity, and then you divide by number of shares, you will get that. So you can do this calculation directly by taking equity, or you can take the assets and remove the liabilities and then divide that figure by number of shares, that will also give value per equity share. So similarly, if you look at Infosys, you have, these are the total liabilities and total assets also. They don't have any debt. They have some small amount of debt, like 3165. So if that means expected everything is in terms of equity. So divide that by number of shares, that gives you value per equity share. Till 2018-19 they didn't have any liability, but no debt, the zero debt company, but now they have a small portion of debt. So TCS, yes, TCS has some debt. Total assets 106,418. Then they have, otherwise you can look at this equity 375 plus 73,993 here. The reserve surplus, the other equity, and they together, that gives you value per value of equity, and that you divide number of shares, gives value per share. Okay, so we have discussed about valuation of shares applying book value approach or the asset valuation approach, or balance sheet approach also is known as. Now go to the next one, that is, so if you go back, we talked about valuation equity shares based on cash flow method, asset based valuation method, then you go relative valuation method. So relative valuation method means if X company is valued at this, what is the Y company? So then that is, you have to take something as a benchmark. Okay, that's why I always tell in the class, I ask what is the, I think we discussed that in the final statement analysis also, like whether a particular CGPA is good or bad, how do you know that? So you may compare it the topper of the batch or the class or the section, or a particular, or maybe your roommate itself, roommate himself or herself, you find out, then you say, okay, your CGPA is relatively better or worse compared to the roommate or compared to the benchmark, something like that. So similarly, you can also go relative valuation method. So we will not go by the value per market price per what is already available. Let's say we will not go by that thing, whereas we will like to find out if some other companies in that particular sector is valued this much, how much will this value? So for that we need a benchmark. One of the very popular method of valuation in this case is it's called price earning ratio approach, based on price earnings. What do you do here? I take comparable companies, same type of sector. I take the price earning ratio of these companies, and then take the average of that. So let's say company A is in a particular sector. The comparable companies are company 1, company 2, company 3, company 4, and company 5. So the price earning ratio is, let's say, 15, 16, 17, 14, and 13. So what is my average price earning ratio? Is 15 plus 16. So let me take total, divide by 5. This comes to 75. Average comes to 15. So average P ratio of this comparable company is 15. And what is my earnings per share of A? Let's say rupees 7. So value will be now, the value will be earnings per share rupees 7 into this value 15. That means I can expect my share will be traded at 15 times of its earnings per share. It comes to rupees 105. That is one of the very popular ratio. Similarly, you can also use something called price to book ratio. Find out compare companies price to book ratio for a couple of companies. Take the average. Ideally, we should take the median for ratios. The ideal average is median, unlike mean. So we should take that median. And in median data, not so many data are available to find the median as well. For median, you should have very good range of data. You can take the average or simple average also. So similarly, take the price to book ratio. So let's say average price to book ratio is 3.5. So how do I know the value per share then? So I'll now find out the book value per share of A. Let's say it comes to rupees 25. So what will be my value per share then? It will be 25 into 3.5. So that comes to 87.5. Right? That is another approach. So if let me just show here. I was shared one website called Screener with you. So let me go to that. So if you see, I have chosen a company Tata Steel. So if you look at the peers in Tata Steel, you can see here the P ratio of these companies are 39.47, 41.42, SAIL 8.19, APL, Apollo Tubes, this much, Tata Steel, BSL, Jindal Steel, something like that. So what I can do, one can take the median of these ratios except Tata Steel here, and then find out the value of Tata Steel applying the average P ratio or median P ratio of comparable companies in the same sector, and then find the value by multiplying with the earnings per share of Tata Steel. So that may lead to a value which is expected, but actual value of the company may be more or less than the value that you got by applying the average PE multiple. So in that case, you can say your company is overvalued or undervalued. Another way is that yes, your average PE ratio is more than the PE ratio of your company, then you can say your company is undervalued. If it is less than the PE ratio of your company, average PE is less than your PE ratio, then you can say your company is overvalued. Okay, so now the challenge in case of price earning ratio is that if the company is making losses, so what shall we do now? Because P ratio is not proper to suggest if the earnings per share is negative. Okay, so that has no meaning. If the price of the one company is 30 rupees per share, whereas the earnings per share is -1, so 30 by -1 has no meaning as such. So we don't calculate the P ratio of such companies which has got negative profit or losses. It is not correct to find out. So in that case, how do you go about? You want to still find the valuations. There are several companies, startup, maybe new companies, they're making, but they're not making profit. So how do you value them? So what is the method? So you'll go for some other approach. Okay. So there, what we do, we go for something like this. Maybe we go for value of the company itself. Then do that. One of the approach was that price to book ratio. That is also there. The other ratio, then you go up in the ladder. So if the profit after tax is negative, PBT will also be expected negative, no doubt about that. Then you go to profit before interest and tax. That may be positive. So you can find out PBIT per share. But that is not a proper approach. Why? Because PBIT belongs to both lenders and shareholders. So finding out PBIT per share is not correct. If the company is financed entirely by equity, then you can say PBIT by number share. But if the company is entirely financed by equity, company not have any interest. The company doesn't have interest, that means PBIT will be same. If PBIT is positive, PBT will be positive. PBT is positive, PAT is also positive. So there is no problem there. The fact is that your PBT or profit before tax is negative and company is not financed by debt, that is profit before interest and tax is also negative. So there is also problem. Then what we do, they go to up and up till they find a positive figure called sales. So they may go for okay, sales per share. So instead of price to earnings, it will be price to sales per share. That is another relative valuation method. Okay. So because your earnings per share is negative, then there is another approach also where what you do here, we go to find the value of the company itself, the enterprise value. So if we have seen in that ProAce database, I'm sharing it again. So if you go to valuation indicators, here you saw something called enterprise value of the company. Enterprise value of the company is nothing but value of the equity plus value of debt in market terms. That means market value of equity plus market value of debt gives you enterprise value. If market value of debt is not available, if debt may not be listed, you can take book value of debt as the proxy for market value of debt. But market value of equity will be available because you have got the number of shares. You also market price per share. So number of shares and market price per share will give you market value of equity. So that gives you enterprise value. And then in the denominator, you will take something called profit before depreciation, interest, tax, and amortization, or earnings before depreciation, interest, tax, and amortization, EBITDA. So that can be taken as the denominator. Enterprise value can be taken as the numerator. And then you take the market enterprise value divided by EBITDA. That gives a EBITDA multiple. Like in this case of Tata Consulting Services, EBITDA multiple is 23.68 latest. If you look at last audited results based on that, the EBITDA multiple comes to 14.08. Similarly, if you look at the Infosys, the EBITDA multiple comes to 11.17, that last year. And Mahindra & Mahindra EBITDA multiple likely to be lower. It comes to how much? 1.25. So here you got PBDIT, there you got EBDIT. Both are same. So now what should I do with this? Yes, how do I do with these things? Let's say I have a company which is comparable with the Infosys and TCS. So what do we have then? The EBITDA multiple of Infosys is how much? The EBITDA multiple of Infosys is 11.17. So what I do here, I write EBITDA multiple, EBITDA multiple of Infosys is 11.17. Then we have TCS. For this, in the interest of time, I am considering only two companies. We can also consider multiple companies for this. So TCS, it comes to how much? Let's go to TCS. In TCS, EBITDA multiple for last year is 14.08. So I go and write here 14.08. Okay. So if I do that, it comes to, what is my average EBITDA multiple? Average multiple is, so 11.417 plus 14.08, that comes to 25.25 divided by 2, that comes to 12.625. Then what I do, let's say the company that I am doing the valuation, EBITDA for that company is, let's say, rupees 30 crore. So what is my value of enterprise value then of the company? Is company A. So enterprise value of the company A is how much? 30 crore into 12.625. So that comes to So no, that's wrong. So 3, 5, 3, 2, 7, 3, 6, 8, 3, 1 is 4. So 37.875 is the enterprise value. Now 37.8 is actually 378.75 is the enterprise value of this particular company. Then what do I do with this 378.75? So 378.75 is your enterprise value, and I just, let's say, value of the date is, let's say, 100 crore. I'm just assuming here. So what is value of equity? Is 270.75 crore, and the number of equity shares is equal to, let's say, 20 crore. So value per share is 270.75 rupees crore divided by 20. So that gives me 139.38. This is your value per share in rupees. So what we did, we found the enterprise value EBITDA multiple of comparable companies to that average, and average EBITDA multiple, we multiplied the EBITDA of your company that you want to value. That will give you enterprise value, let's say in this case 378.75 crore. Then from the value of debt you take out, because enterprise value is nothing but market value of equity plus market value of debt, or value of equity plus value of debt. You can say VE plus VD. Okay. So once you have EV, once you have VD, you can also find the value of equity. Then divide the value of equity by number of shares, that gives you value per share. So this is the approach that we can apply relative valuation method, where you are using EBITDA multiple. Okay, so with this, I'm ending the class. In the next class tomorrow, we'll touch upon the valuation to some extent, but I will be discussing about risk and return in case of equity investment.